with Stef Crowley from Imogen from Australia. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You guys started all the way back in 2005 as kind of like a pop songwriting thing. Talk
Yeah.
about how it all started and the meaning behind the name Imogen Brave.
Okay, so I actually auditioned to join a cover band back in 2004, which was a pop rock cover band that toured the Adelaide pub scene. And off the back of that, the guys that I met through that cover band, we sort of started collaborating. Particularly the guitarist and I, Mick, have had a long-term friendship now. He's always written his own music through other bands, and eventually asked me to lend some vocals on some of his stuff that he'd written. Um, yeah, back then. So I jumped on board with that, and initially it was just him writing it all and me just lending my voice. And then after a while, he sort of allowed me to kind of write a bit, and we realised that we had a really interesting kind of songwriting partnership that was forming. So I jumped on board and got to do a little bit of my own experimentation with that. The other guys came along a little bit later on, but our drummer from the cover band actually ended up joining this new original project, which started off as a duo and eventually became a full band as well. We've actually had now onto our third bass player, and our first bass player though was also part of that original covers gig. So it was kind of the convenient thing, but also there were musicians that we knew, that we trusted, and we had like a common idea about what we enjoyed about music. The name, though, was something that we struggled with for a long time. The guys in the band have been metalheads for years before Imogen Brave, so the names they were coming up with were kind of completely opposite to what I would have picked. So I guess that the name Imogen Brave kind of came off the back of that concept that you've got these tough, rough guys, and then me, this little sort of delicate girl, as a lot of people like to remind me. And so the idea of putting two words together that were completely opposite but not obvious. So Imogen was a way of expressing sort of purity and innocence, and the word brave was just to give it a little bit of an edge as well. So there was one particular band that I always envied the name of, and they're an Australian band actually from Perth, and I don't know if they're around anymore, but back then, at least when we were choosing our name, there was a band called Razor Lily, and I really liked the idea of sort of the razor edge and a flower. So that was kind of where the concept came from. And eventually we just chucked a couple of words together and said, well, we liked the fact that it didn't have any preconceived ideas attached to the name. So we thought, well, that's probably a good thing, because you don't see the name and kind of assume anything in particular, which is what we hoped for.
Now, you guys kind of have like a lot of different genres in your music. Like you said, you have kind of like a pop influence, but there's a lot of rock, there's a lot of grunge in there.
Yeah.
Do you like genre classifications?
I don't know. I guess for me, I've always considered myself a really eclectic music listener, and I guess the guys too. But even though they came from playing in heavy bands, whether it be metal or I think Andy was in a glam rock band at one point, our drummer. But all of us have quite classic roots in what we enjoy. Like Mick's a massive Beatles fan, so he still has quite an element of pop to his sensibility, even though he kind of grew into this sort of more heavy rock metal thing. And for me, I guess, I started off listening to pop as a kid, and I still do now. But grunge was something I went through a massive phase of during my earlier teens. And I think we've all kind of visited those genres throughout time, and we've kind of picked bits that we like and enjoy and appreciate from each of those genres, and kind of splice it together in what seems to work for us. So,
Where do you find your band being classified as?
well, that's a hard one because we've changed over the years a bit too, not intentionally, but we started out quite, I guess, pop alternative, and the heaviness came a bit later on as we started gigging more, and the more we kind of played with, heavier bands, the more we kind of, thought, yeah, we could chunk this up a bit too.
Where do you find people in the area, like when they talk about your band, where do they like kind of pigeonhole your band as?
Yeah, well, I guess for most people it's hard rock, which I never sort of thought we were, but kind of watching back on live videos and hearing people's feedback, that seems to be what we're categorized as. We're definitely not metal. When we don't have that kind of stylings necessarily. There might be little elements to that, but certainly more along the sort of rock alternative vein, I would say. But people will often ask, "Who do you sound like?" If they've never seen us, who do you sound like? And that's a really, really hard question for me to answer because I don't feel as though I myself, at least, have modelled my vocals on any particular band. But there's certainly references that you can't help but pick up just from being exposed to particular music over the years. But yeah, I'd say in the hard rock vein.
Okay. Do you think that kind of limits when people? Because I hate genre classifications because
Yeah,
I don't usually put it when I put up about a band because I want people to actually listen to it.
yeah, sure.
Because if you put a certain genre on it, you're almost limiting the audience because sometimes people won't listen to a band if they think, oh, well, that's not my kind of genre, when a
Yeah.
lot of bands are kind of a mix of different. So do you think the whole genre classification needs to loosen up maybe a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, a lot of my good friends in the Adelaide music scene have such a splice of different genres in their music, and it is hard to define. And I don't think you should necessarily be defined by a particular genre. I mean, like I said, when people ask what we are, I sort of say rock, and they kind of go, "Well, what's rock? Like who do you sound like?" And it's really hard to. And I say, just we'll come to a show and you'll find out. But it's tricky, and I think that yeah, by pigeonholing yourself, it's not always a good thing.
People talk about like the U.S. scene a lot. They talk about the UK scene, the music scene there because they have the Download Fest and the huge festivals. Do you kind of feel like Australia, the music scene there, kind of gets overlooked in the general worldwide music scene?
Yeah. I mean, I guess so to an extent. I think the music scene is much smaller, even though we have some great exports that are getting worldwide recognition, and even in a more underground sense, there are some fantastic bands that are known throughout the world. But I think if you kind of look at the amount of Australian artists that are really out there in comparison to say US or UK artists of a similar genre, here we go using that word again, it is quite a lot smaller and perhaps not as recognized. But I feel as though for me personally, Australian music's kind of going through a little bit of a slump in terms of our world stage status, and I don't know if that's because of the type of trends that we're creating here for ourselves, or whether we are trying to follow what is popular or working well overseas. I don't know. I don't know what sort of where the issues lie with that, but it feels to me, at least on a local level, like there is something that's kind of holding us back, and we might be doing it to ourselves. I don't know, but and in Adelaide as well, like it's kind of a talked about thing that the rock music scene has kind of died off a bit in the last sort of 10 years. I was talking to a friend recently who was around 10 years, 15 years ago playing in hard rock bands and metal bands and that sort of thing, and they were saying, every weekend without fail, the venues would be absolutely packed, and people would just go there every Friday night, every Saturday night, and it would be, at capacity. And these days, it's really hard to kind of pull those kind of crowds, and you have to really limit the gigs you play in order to be able to actually kind of draw a really cool crowd and make the most of those opportunities. So yeah, I think things have changed for sure, but we've got some cool stuff going on here.
There are some amazing bands in Australia. Squeaker is absolutely amazing. Um,
Good friends of ours too.
Deerstalker, I've done a video interview with them. Great band
Yeah,
down there. Irresponsibles.
also
Um,
good friends.
yeah, Heaven the Axe, I've done quite a few with Phoebe.
Phoebe's amazing. Yeah, she's a really cool chick. She does it for us girls. She holds her own. That's for sure.
What do you think needs to change in order for the music scene to kind of come back to what it once was?
I think it's kind of a community. It's a really community based thing. I feel. I mean, for me, it's got to start at the grassroots. You have to kind of, I guess it's converting the people that listen to, records at home of bands that they loved 10 years ago to actually getting them out, out to see shows. I find that, there are a lot of people that come out of the woodwork whenever there's a big concert in town, or like a band's coming back after 20 years for a reunion or something. Those people come out of nowhere, they come out to shows and they fill the place and they absolutely love it. But it's kind of converting those people to, coming out to see what's on the scene now and really enjoy it. But I mean, I have a lot of friends that love music but just don't go see live shows. It's not their thing. They're not, it's not something that they're used to, or but they're quite happy to download music. They're quite happy to watch MTV or whatever. But I guess it's just it's about making it more community, and I think that's the great thing about festivals, is that you really do feel that sense of community and that kind of kindred spirit with 100,000 other people that are there to see the same thing. But for local bands, at least, it's kind of like, oh, if only 1% of these people came to our show on Saturday, it'd be amazing, But it's really got to be about awareness, I think, and just kind of finding creative ways to get people involved. So that's that's my ideas on the matter, anyway.
Does MTV actually play music down there still?
Well, I have no idea. I'm just pulling random names out of the hat. See, I don't have Foxtel or, any satellite TV, so I wouldn't even know. I watch Rage. That's our basic channel video show Saturday mornings. That's my thing, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's over here. It's mostly it's all shows about 16-year-old pregnant girls right now. So
yeah,
that's
I
about
have
it.
heard of the shows.
Your EP Open Heart, that came out in 2011.
Yeah.
Now, you guys don't really have it widely available. It's not on Amazon, it's not on Spotify or anything. What's the reasons behind that?
Well, Open Heart started out as a actually pre-production demo, and Mick, our guitarist, he's always sort of collected equipment and recording equipment at home and produced some really decent stuff over the years. But initially when we sat down to say, right, we're going to record what would end up being Open Heart, we thought, well, we'll do this production at Mick's house, work out the demos, work out what we want to do so that when we go into studio, we're prepared. And in the end, what we ended up coming out with the demos was, a product that we were, relatively happy with for our first release. And we kind of just went, you know what, I think for this one, we just want to kind of spread it locally and try and get people to come and see us. And for us, it was more of like a local marketing tool than anything. So it ended up, like you say, not widely available online. It's more a physical, almost like a physical business card, with the CD. So something that we can sort of hand out. And even now at our shows, now that it's been a couple of years since we've released it, it is something we literally give out for free to people because we just want to spread our music. And, to an extent it's worked because people will know our names now. And even if it's just here in Adelaide, it's certainly had an impact. And I think for us as well, the next record that we're going to do coming up very soon is something that, we're much happier, I suppose, with where we've gone as a band since Open Heart. We have more of a clear vision of what we want to do with the record, so we feel probably as though we're going to be more invested in this one to be able to say, right, now we're going to put it right out there and, spread it digitally as much as we can, as well as, on a local level. So that's the plan for the next record.
All right. So what's your whole take on the whole? I mean, music's basically gone digital now, like we've talked about, and it's all downloading and everything, and it's obviously much easier for people to just take it for free. What's your view on that whole scene now?
Yeah, well, it's really catch-22 because there's so many positives that have come out of, music being digitally available. You've got bands that would never otherwise be heard able to share their music and network, all over the world. So that's one thing, you've got that aspect where, unknowns become known. And there are bands that have become famous just through either, YouTube or iTunes or some other platform with digital songs. I guess the other thing as well is that, CDs that may no longer be being reproduced are now able to be downloaded. So that's a great thing too. And the downside, I guess, for me at least, is obviously the piracy aspect. So, music that you've put your heart and soul into, you've poured your money into, being spread without you actually getting anything for it. And I think there's an impression that a lot of general public probably have, and I've found talking to a few people as well about it, that I think people think, they're famous, they're already getting money from everyone else that's buying the CD. It doesn't matter if I just download it because they're already, they've got all these other people kind of chipping in, putting money in their pockets, but, that's not always the case. But, particularly in a smaller music scene, even in Australia, you can be platinum, triple platinum and still be broke. You're not making a huge amount of money just because you've had a hit song or whatever. So there's definitely that aspect as well. So there's good and bad I think that's come from it, and I certainly can't say it's all bad because we've benefited from it ourselves. So being able to spread our music to the other side of the world, and and allowing people to download as well, from our own pages too. So that can only be good too. So
what's next for you guys in 2013? What's the big plans for this year?
So for this year coming up, we've already had a bit of a roller coaster year. All good though. We've had some opportunities to potentially have some national kind of interviews on TV. So that's kind of under the lid at the moment. But so that's something. But we, in terms of recording a CD, we definitely have at least 7 songs that we want to record on this next CD. So it'll be halfway between an EP and an album, I guess like a mini album really, because it might even bump up to 8 tracks by the end. But we're going into pre-production now. Drum tracking starts on the 27th of April, so it's all happening. But yeah, we really just want to make this one much more authentic and live, and kind of really try and capture the live feel, whereas in the last one I think we were kind of finding our feet a little bit in terms of firstly what our sound is in general with our songwriting, but secondly how to replicate what we feel we are as a true live act into our music as well. So it was a kind of trying to find that balance last time. So but yeah, so we've got quite a few exciting things coming up. So I imagine that we'll be finished recording probably by the end of May, I'm hoping. So that's the plan at this stage. But then from there, we're in the process of recording and editing a music video as well for one of the tracks on the CD, yet to be announced. And that'll be hopefully circulating online pretty soon as well. So once that happens, you'll be the first to know about it.